weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Innovate, that's what Japanese are known for. Nothing is taboo anymore. And we have the resilience and resources to face the future.
Michio Ishida, CNA, Tokyo.
What are the financial forces driving Asia's rise, from transnational business expansions and technology for digital growth to untapped opportunities in the region and beyond? Understand the trends, innovations and corporate deals that are building Asia. On Asia First, Monday mornings on CNA. This is Asia Now.
It's just after 12 noon here in Singapore and in Hong Kong, 9:30 in the morning in New Delhi, 11 a.m. in Jakarta. I'm Christine Chan. Weary residents of the Australian state of Victoria return to a fourth lockdown as the authorities race to track the spread of a highly infectious variant of the coronavirus. And the Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai has been sentenced today to another 14 months in jail for having marched in an unauthorized assembly when the anti-government protests took place in 2019. India's foreign minister is headed for the United States for talks on vaccine cooperation, security in the Indo-Pacific, and countering China's growing influence in this region. Nearly 7 million people in Australia's state of Victoria are now in a brand new lockdown, their fourth since the start of this pandemic. That took effect overnight and will last for the week. The authorities hope this will help them contain a fast-growing cluster of COVID-19 in Melbourne. There were 4 new cases reported on the first day of this lockdown, bringing their cluster total to 30 within 5 days. Residents in the state must now remain at home at all times, except for essential work for grocery shopping, healthcare or exercise. Masks must be worn at all times unless they're at home. Prime Minister Scott Morrison has warned of tough times ahead.
The next 7 days in Victoria will be very challenging. And of course, we are very mindful of the distress and the difficulty that this will impose upon people right across Victoria as a result of what is being described, rightly I think, by the acting Premier as a circuit-breaking lockdown, and a lockdown for 7 days that hopefully won't go as long as that.
Mr. Morrison had previously said he would ensure Australia is amongst the leaders in the world when it comes to administering those vaccine shots. Now, Australia not only has been slow in its rollout, vaccine hesitancy is rife. Brianna Piazza explains what the authorities are now doing to try and convince more people to get inoculated.
We've heard many times now from our Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, that Australia is the envy of the world because it's managed to, for the most part, stamp out COVID-19. In most of the country, really, life has been going on as normal with little or no restrictions at all. So it's really these lockdowns that are happening tend to be not too often, but still very, very much a concern for businesses, particularly here in Melbourne. So pretty much one of the issues that we're running into with the vaccine rollout is hesitancy. So that relates to very much sections of the population that are eligible to be vaccinated. Many people are holding off on getting their vaccinations because of concerns they may have around the safety of the vaccine. So even just in recent days, we heard that the vaccination hubs in Melbourne were pretty much empty, and people who walked past described these as heartbreaking scenes. But that is starting to pick up in recent days. State authorities in Victoria are starting to talk about opening up vaccinations to younger sections of the population. But also recently we've just heard that businesses are getting on board as well. So Australian airline Qantas is considering offering free flights and frequent flyer points to people who have had both vaccinations. It's understood that they're still trying to iron out a few of the finer details, but if that goes ahead, that would be coming into effect sort of towards the next few months and for the rest of the year. So definitely what we understand is that Australia's borders will remain closed until we can get much of the population vaccinated.
Singapore, meantime, will bar all entry to short-term travellers who may have been to Victoria in the 21 days prior. This rule will kick in on Sunday. Singapore residents, permanent residents and long-term pass holders who recently travelled to Victoria State must now serve a 7-day stay-home notice in their residence. Swab tests will be carried out at the start and the end of that isolation period. At the moment, travellers are only required to test negative upon their arrival in Singapore. Travellers from other parts of Australia will not be affected by this rule, as Singapore will continue to monitor and adjust border measures to help manage the situation with COVID-19. Now, the U.S. is intensifying its rivalry with China. There are fresh calls now from the United States to probe the origins of the coronavirus. And there's a tech bill as well to counter China's growing influence. Let's talk about that row over COVID-19 first. The United States has asked the WHO to carry out a second phase of its investigations into the origins of the coronavirus. They want independent experts to have full access to all the original data and samples now in China. Yesterday, the U.S. President Joe Biden asked his intelligence community to further probe the origins as well. Now, the community say their agencies did have two theories as to how COVID-19 first came about, that it might have emerged naturally from human contact with infected animals, or it might have been the result of a lab accident in Wuhan. The National Intelligence Chief in the U.S., however, has shot down those theories, saying the supporting evidence is far from conclusive. China has also slammed the U.S. president's call for more probes.
美方根本不在乎事实和真相，也没有兴趣进行严肃的科学溯源，而是想借疫情搞污名化和政治操弄，甩锅推责。这是对科学的不尊重，对人民生命的不负责，更是对全球团结抗疫努力的破坏。
Further adding to those tensions, the U.S. Senate has now advanced a sweeping package of legislation aiming to boost their ability to compete with Chinese technology. These measures will authorize some $190 billion for the provisions to strengthen U.S. technology in general, and another $54 billion will go to increasing the production of semiconductors, microchips, and telecommunication equipment. Now, this U.S. legislation seeks to counter China's growing global influence through diplomacy by working with allies and increasing U.S. involvement in international organizations. Other reports have emerged that the U.S. president may have picked his new ambassadors to China and India. Simon Marks tells us about the nominee for China, Nicholas Burns. He's potentially the next ambassador. And Simon also explains why there's been a delay from the White House, in fact, in these names being announced.
So we're hearing that Nicholas Burns, former US ambassador to NATO, a man with an absolutely extensive curriculum vitae, working for the State Department in a whole variety of different locations and positions, is the man being tipped to head to China. He has described China as the biggest challenge that the United States is currently facing on the world stage, and he will bring decades of experience to the role if he is nominated and then if he is confirmed in the post by the United States Senate. It seems pretty clear that the Biden administration wants to put all of these names out simultaneously and wants to do so in a bid to demonstrate diversity, gender diversity, diversity of viewpoints and approaches. This is unusual. We've not seen this in Washington, D.C. in the recent past, and there will be critics of this approach who say, for example, the United States right now desperately needs an ambassador to Israel. So why delay naming the administration's nominee for that position while you're getting all of these other names finalised on the document, rather than fill some of the positions that are vacant right now and urgently need